Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 742. My opponent kicked off with e4 and went with d5, the center counter. And you'll see that he played e5, a very rare move at this point. I think taking is just better. But it turns out e5 is not so bad. It seems like the best that black can do is to transpose into a French defense at this point with either e6 like I played or c5 also would most likely transpose into a French defense because eventually you want to play the e-pawn forward. I guess trying to get the bishop outside the pawn chain is an idea here, but I just went with e6 immediately. And yeah, we get the advanced variation of the French defense. And here the main move is just c3. Yeah, I think I looked at that a little bit just to show the main sequence for a couple moves. You know, I develop a knight, white develops a knight, and it's a pretty normal position. I'm going to try and get pressure on that pawn, maybe bring the queen to b6. Also developing the bishop to d7. Looks like that's an idea here. But I usually play with queen b6 myself. Sometimes it just gets hard for white to hold on to the center. So you just, as black, it's pretty simple to play. You just keep piling up pressure on the center until something breaks. Anyway, let's go back to the game. He didn't play that way. He played knight f3. Pretty rare move right here. And I could take right away, it looks like, but I just keep developing. This is all okay. He went bishop b5, another rare move. And then I went bishop d7. And it seems like black is equal in that position. The chess engine, though, thinks that if I go ahead and take, which was also the suggestion in the opening book, he takes back, and then bring my knight here. It's kind of a funny move, not one I thought of. But, well, you know, it's defending against this attack on the pen knight. It looks like, you know, it looks like I would have some trouble wriggling out. I mean, how am I going to castle? I have to develop this bishop first. But I can kick his bishop away and unpen, I guess. Maybe force it to trade. Anyway, yeah, the chess engine likes this for black. The move I played, bishop d7, was also top choice of the chess engine, but it rates this as about equal. So we stay in the range of about equal for a while, which is, I mean, a good opening result for me. I went ahead and took here. Maybe a little more accurate would be to play knight e7. I didn't like this line, though. Knight e7, he takes the pawn, knight to f5, b4, he can support the pawn. The chess engine just wants to kind of play this as a gambit, you know, go after those pawns, try and weaken them, maybe induce c3 here and weaken some of these diagonals here and just play it gambit style. Thinks that's actually best play for black. But, well, this still leaves us in the range of about even. And in this position, I'm not too worried if he wants to trade his good knight for this bishop, which is not at the moment doing a whole lot. So I'm going to just continue with my development. Knight e7, goes knight c3, and I think this is all good play from both sides. Knight g6, goes rook e1. He's got to keep as many defenders as possible on his advanced e-pawn. That's kind of his trump card in this position. Let's see, I go bishop to b4, and bishop d2, unpinning the knight immediately. I castled. And he went g3. An interesting move. I thought the idea was just to restrict my knight, prevent it from going to these squares. But he has a different idea entirely. I just bring my bishop back to d7. I decided since he hasn't taken, I'm going to push my pawns forward and you know, try and undermine the e-pawn here and open things up for my bishop. And notice he's created these light squared weaknesses around his king, so that makes the bishop a more attractive piece to keep for the long run. And but all this is still in the range of about even. But h4 is apparently a mistake. The chess engine just wants to play with a3 here, force me to move my bishop or trade, declare my intentions with that bishop. I was thinking of coming back like this and putting more pressure on the pawn that way with my bishop. And that would be okay for both sides. h4 is better for black now, and f6, the move I played, is the best response. You know, I'm immediately giving my knight a square to run to. If he pushes on, which he does, and this is a good square, and it picks up a pawn. Of course, he wasn't forced to play h5. He could have tried to, and I was sort of expecting this, he could have just taken that pawn. I mean, I still get a place to put my knight, and I get quick development with the queen. And yeah, the chess engine thinks this is also good for black. Bishop e4, bishop e3. The funny point is that the knight can take take that pawn, and it gives this move here, queen g4 and e5. So kind of a aggressive way of playing. Look at all the pieces that are hanging. The bishop is hanging, the knight is hanging, and this knight is hanging. So if the queen takes the bishop, I'll take the knight, and I still have a hanging knight over here, but well, the pawn is attacking both the bishop and the knight, so he has hanging pieces as well. Anyway, it all works out well for black. But what happens after queen takes, bishop e3, knight takes h4? Why can't he just take the knight? Well, queen g4 is just a winning attack. There's just too many open lines here. The rook can easily come up and over to deliver checks here, or perhaps the fatal check here. Also, this pawn can be pushed forward with tempo, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. His king is just too exposed, and his pieces are not in position to defend. So that's just a win. So I really did not think about that too much. Let's see. Well, it was his choice. But after, e takes f6, I mean, he forced me to move the knight by playing h5, so I didn't have the opportunity to play that knight takes h4 move here. But if he had done this and then played bishop e3, I doubt that I would have found the knight h4 move in this situation. But it's a nice idea. 2 pawns for the piece and opening up the king. Definitely something I should think about. Well, I hadn't thought that far ahead. Anyway, he didn't give me the chance to play that because he pushed on with h5. But this just gives up a center pawn. Let's see. But he found a kind of a clever way to get the pawn back. He plays f4 here, and he's got his rook and his knight coordinating on the e6 pawn. So I played knight c6, and then he took the pawn. But there is a very clever tactical defense with knight to c4. And after knight to c4, it's actually not good for him to take the pawn. And so here's your tactics quiz for the video. What's the reason? What's the problem with knight takes e6? Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away. After knight takes e6, I have queen to b6 check. The knight is out of the way, so that diagonal is open to the king, and well, it just wins a piece. So he can't take it. And if he leaves the knight there and takes with the rook, then he loses the exchange. So that's not good either. And I think after the trades, I still have queen b6 check to pick up whatever piece. Well, to pick up the knight when it's left there after trading off the rook. So anyway, knight to c4 was a much better move because of that tactic. It's also a more active square for the knight, so I could have considered it for that reason as well. But I wanted to get rid of this knight. That's a powerful piece there on d4, and if I can trade it off, then I figure that's an improvement. And I totally missed that this pawn was hanging. I actually just overlooked that. So after this trade, the chess engine still likes black, but the material is now even. And so we get into the range where, let's see, well, d4 is a good move. It goes knight e2. It's after d3, I guess. So black is still keeping an advantage. The chess engine liked black all the way through here, but it doesn't like this d3 move and the follow queen takes d3. After that, it's about even. Here, I still had a pretty good game, the chess engine says, with moves like this. It wants me to play bishop c5 here, setting up a discovered check, which would win a piece. And if the king moves away, then queen to d5 is a very nice move. It actually is a double attack. It's attacking the rook and it's attacking the pawn. So the rook has to retreat. Oh, I guess he has to push that pawn forward. Yeah, where does that rook go to? Anyway. Yeah, I guess he pushes the pawn forward, queen takes, and then he can defend the rook with the knight and also open up a retreat retreat squares for the knight. Yeah, so that would have been all good for black. After d3, I was trying to get this square for my queen so I could come in with check. But it's a little bit slow, and his knight is guarding that square anyway. And after this, the game is about even. So he gave me an advantage with this inappropriate h-pawn push, or mistimed, maybe I should say. But I've not played accurately since then, and so it's back to even. Let's see, traded off the bishop, and I went ahead and traded queens here. I didn't see a good way to keep the queens on, although the chess engine found something. Oh, I think it was knight takes. Yeah, here was the idea I missed. Knight takes bishop, defends the queen, so I could have taken that way and allowed him to trade and gotten a more active knight out of it. So as things go, this activated his rook, and my knight can get kicked around on this square. So I lost a couple tempos over the ideal sequence, which is to take the bishop first, defending my queen. Let's see. He activates his rook with rook d7. All this is still, though, in the range of about even. I mean, the chess engine goes back and forth between even or white is better, but not by a whole lot. Let's see. I went rook to e8. This kind of forces an exchange because he's got that loose knight there. And I wanted to get rid of, I wanted to make sure he didn't double rooks on the 7th rank and needed to activate my pieces. So it's a good way to do that, I think. Let's see, he took. I took back, so my rook comes out with tempo, and he went knight to c3. And now this b6 move actually gives white an advantage again. The chess engine says I have to play rook e7 to keep it in the range of about even, and this would be dead even after the rooks are traded. The pawn structure is symmetrical. His pawns are advanced and might become a target, but they're close enough together they can defend themselves, I guess. And his king is close enough to move forward to protect those pawns. So pretty even endgame, probably drawn. Anyway, I went b6 and allowed him to take. I had some ideas here. Let's see, he went rook c7 first, chasing my knight. Then he took, and played knight to c4, which I think is a good move. It hits this pawn, asks him what he wants to do about it. The chess engine wants to play like this. It wants to play knight to b5, just give up that pawn, and then get his knight to a good square, knight to d6, chasing my rook back. And, the material's still even, but his knight's covering this square where my knight might want to go to attack his pawn. And, he's just got active pieces here, and he's probably going to round up this pawn. It would be a good endgame for white if he had played that way, starting with knight b5. Instead, he played b4, moving the pawn out of the way of my knight, but keeping his extra material. But then that creates further weaknesses because rook e3 here hits his knight, and he can't really save everything here. He played knight to d5, so I grab one pawn with check, and then I grab the other pawn, and he just traded out. And now this is a rook and pawn endgame, and it's all even actually. Even though I'm an extra pawn, this should not be a win. But it does require some careful play, and since I have the extra pawn, I might as well play for the win. But from an objective point of view, this should be a drawn endgame. So let's go forward and see. I think everything is all right for quite a long ways. So let's step through this part and see how we get to the critical situations here. I mean, the knights are sort of tying each other up. He's defending this pawn, and I'm defending this pawn. If he attacks my pawn, I'm in position. If I attack his pawn, he's in position. But his knight can't wander too far away, and mine, neither can mine, because the pawn can come under attack at any moment. So I have to make sure wherever I go with the knights, it can always get back to some square that defends the pawn. Anyway, but I have the extra pawn over here, and that'll keep his king tied up. So that's my idea, is to activate this and try and get that extra pawn, that passed pawn, moving, and get it as far forward as I can. And so, like I said, this is all still in the range of about even. There was no winning chances really up until this point here. He played knight f2 here. And that's actually a mistake. He's trying to round up this pawn, but I can keep the pawn by playing knight e2 check. So let's just back up to say if he just goes back to c3, attacking my pawn, keeping my knight tied up, that's still a draw. After knight f2, I have a winning chance here, which I missed. I didn't play this right. But the move knight e2 check chases his king away. King could go here, but probably wants to stay in front of the pawn, and then I can push forward with the tempo on his knight, chase the knight away, and then my king can come forward. And yeah, the chess engine says I can win from here. I'm sure it's a long procedure. It gave like mate in 25 moves or something like that. So, you know, half of those moves at least will be involved in careful maneuvering to queen this pawn. But I guess at this point I'm close enough that I could actually force the pawn through. Anyway, I didn't play that. He went knight f2. I went knight c2, attacking his pawn, and we just got this trade. He took the pawn on the g file, and I took the pawn on the b file, and then everybody charges over to the queen side, and of course I was getting my knight out of the way so I could move the pawn forward. All this should be a draw up until this point. I mean, I discovered this clever tactic which sometimes can win a game for you. So it's always nice to know, you know, just sacrifice a piece, which, you know, this exchange is pretty much forced. So either sacrificing or exchanging a piece in order to queen a pawn. The thing is, he doesn't have to take. In fact, if he just plays king d2, and I take the knight, he can take back, and his king is close enough to the pawn to prevent it from queening. So just moving his king here was the winning idea here. Instead, he took my knight and let me push, and then I get the win. He resigned at this point. So anyway, it was an interesting game. My opponent was just moving a little too fast. He's an opponent I've played many times, so I'm not going to criticize him for moving too fast. That's the way he likes to play. He's you know, playing for fun. He's actually, I think, a stronger player than I am in general. I think he's pretty good at calculating. I looked at our record since we played so many times, and I have a 45% score against him. So so he wins more often than I do. And his rating has been much higher. I think when I was first playing him, his rating was around 1,500. So, you know, he's just just playing for fun, like I said. And he always gives an interesting game. You know, I've had a couple games recently where my opponents seem to be trying to bore me to death. And that's not the case with Goliath here. He likes to play an interesting game. So I don't mind. Anyway, I hope you guys like this, and I will see you next time. Bye.